Hello, everyone. Welcome to Yale College Voices, where we share the stories, ideas, and journeys of our staff who shape the Yale College experience. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm your host, Darice Corey. And today's conversation takes us inside La Casa Cultural, the Latino Cultural Center here at Yale, and into the heart of leadership, belonging, and community. And my guest today is Carolina Davila, who is the director of La Casa Cultural. And she has spent over a decade building bridges, empowering students, and creating spaces that honor culture and connection. So welcome, Carolina. I'm so happy you could be here today.
Thank you, Darice. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so glad that you accepted my invite to be on the podcast, because I thought it was a great time to, sort of reintroduce you to the Yale College community, especially now that you're the director of the Cultural Center.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So Carolina's story is one of vision, resilience, and purpose. And I'm just going to share your bio, and then we'll just jump right into a conversation.
Sounds good.
Awesome. So Carolina is the director of La Casa Cultural, Yale's cultural center dedicated to celebrating and supporting Latin students. She brings over a decade of experience in higher education, grounded in a deep commitment to equity, belonging, and community engagement. Since joining La Casa in 2017, Carolina has been instrumental in expanding support for Yale's growing Latin population. As the center's inaugural associate director and now director, she has guided strategic planning, improved operational efficiency, and developed initiatives that strengthen cultural identity and inclusion. Her leadership has led to transformative projects such as the renovation of La Casa's first floor to meet ADA standards, the creation of the annual Latin Excellence Showcase, and the development of intercultural collaborations and staff training programs that foster connection across communities. Beyond her work at La Casa, Carolina has served as a Davenport Fellow. I did not know that. Mm-hmm. And student advisor, mentoring first-year and sophomore students. She also held the role of interim program manager for student organizations within Yale College Student Affairs, where she supported key student groups and governance bodies, including the Undergraduate Organizations Funding Committee, the Senior Class Council, and the Yale College Council elections. Her thoughtful and inclusive approach continues to influence student leadership across campus. Carolina's impact extends nationally through her involvement with the American College Personnel Association and the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators. She has facilitated national presentations on inclusive community building, and also has been recognized with regional and national awards for her leadership and advocacy. Originally from Puerto Rico and raised in Boston, Carolina is a proud first-gen low-income college graduate and a product of public schooling. She earned her bachelor's degree in communication disorders with a minor in Spanish from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and her master's degree in higher education administration from the University of Pennsylvania. In addition to her work in higher education, Carolina is a certified interdisciplinary doula, supporting the education and empowerment of pregnant people of color and families within the Black diaspora. So thank you for coming, Carolina. I'm so happy to have you here.
Gracias, Darice.
Yes. So this is amazing. I wanted to hear a bit more, just about your roots. I know that you're deeply shaped by your Puerto Rican roots, mm-hmm. and Boston, also being from Boston. So I was wondering if you could share a bit more about, like where you grew up and, the experiences that may have influenced your interest in helping the community.
Yeah. You're asking me to rewind the tape. I don't feel old, but then these are the moments when I'm like, what is memory?
Oh, geez.
So I was born in Puerto Rico, mm-hmm. and I lived there back and forth between Boston and Puerto Rico for the first 12 years of my life. Wow. Really the first 5. So mm-hmm. I was born in Puerto Rico and a hurricane hit right after. And my mm-hmm. dad was like, hey, Jacqueline, that's my mom. you need to come back to Boston. So we did because of the hurricane. And then the first 5 years I was back and forth. I lived in Chelsea, Massachusetts for kindergarten. And I remember not speaking a lick of English because my parents only spoke Spanish. They certainly knew how to navigate within the city when it came to English, but the home was always in Spanish. So I remember having a teacher, like what I think would be probably a paraprofessional teacher today, translating everything for me. And one of the memories that I have that just came to mind is we had to, as kindergartners, pick the lunch that we wanted. There was these like little Velcro tapes with our name on it. And I remember early in my time of arriving to kindergarten, one of the options said home lunch. And I was like, word, put my name on there because I thought my mom was going to bring me lunch from home. And they quickly realized when I was the only kid without lunch, just waiting. They were like, no, this meant like you brought your lunch from home. So they gave me something else. And I eventually figured it out. Nobody starved that day. But in kindergartens, when I moved back to Puerto Rico, so the first 6 years, the first grade to sixth grade was all in Puerto Rico. And it was all public school, walking distance from my grandparents' house. I moved around a lot, though. I think I went through 5 elementary schools in those 6 years. So that was kind of the name of the game. I was very used to having to, as used to it as you can be as a child, right? But looking back, pretty used to having to adapt quickly. And then in 7th grade is when I moved to Boston. And my first week of school was 9/11.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I knew a lot of English because of Disney Channel and MTV and Nickelodeon and all these things. But I did not know the words hijack, terrorist, World Trade Center, Twin Towers, none of that. And so it was a pretty overwhelming first week where I decided not to go to school for the rest of the week. Like I don't remember what day of the week it was, but I know I missed consecutive days after because I was just so scared of having to go back to school in a space where I knew the basics and I was in like fully immersed English classes, but there was just such a culture shock at that moment of what it meant to be in the United States. And my dad was still in Puerto Rico at the time. So I was constantly nervous about him flying to Boston to visit us. And I guess another pivotal moment in that experience that Boston was the first time that I met non-Puerto Ricans that spoke Spanish. Oh, wow. But my understanding of it was really rooted in citizenship of like, if you're in the United States, you have to be a citizen. And I didn't understand how people could be citizens without being born in the United States. And so I used to, anytime I heard Spanish, seeking home, I was always excited to hear it. And it was like, are you Puerto Rican? Are you Puerto Rican? Are you Puerto Rican? And everybody was like, no, no, no. And then one day she became a friend eventually, but she just kind of lost it with me asking everybody. And she was like, girl, nobody's Puerto Rican here. Like, just stop asking that question. Again, I'm only 12 years old. And it was an eye-opening moment of realizing that this is expanding a lot of my understanding of what today is like Latinidad and my own upbringing at the time. But it was a pretty shifting moment to go through all of that in middle school.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh my gosh. How did that had to have influenced how you carry yourself in the community in terms of helping others, like just because of your own experiences.
Yeah, I would say so. I was never one to be literally on the mic in any moment. I was always a behind the scenes kind of girl. And I think a part of that was because I moved so much that I was used to having to start over. And the easiest way for me to do that is to kind of like read the room and blend into the background and kind of understand how it goes. I think once my upbringing became a little bit more stable, I was a couple of years in the same school and stuff. I always found myself, and I think it's true even today as a professional administrator, particularly with students and new colleagues, I find myself very invested in the transition of new people into new spaces. Like I want those people to feel comfortable, welcomed, and like they can immediately take ownership of it instead of having to blend into the status quo. And I suspect a lot of that had to do with my own survival mechanisms of moving so much at that time, because while I moved to Boston in 7th grade, I went to one middle school and 2 high schools, one in Florida, one back in Boston. So there was still a lot of transition happening then. And when I went to college, while I was an in-state student going from Boston to UMass Amherst, that same month that I moved to college, my mom moved back to Puerto Rico. So then I had a semi-out-of-state experience where everybody would go home for the weekend. That was very normal. I would go to my friend's house for the weekend because all of my Boston friends were still there. Or I would wait for the longer breaks to take a flight to Puerto Rico or take a flight to Florida where my dad was at the time. So all of those transitions, I think, very much influence in my investment of people feeling welcomed and at home and a sense of belonging.
Yeah, definitely. Is there like a particular or specific experience during that time that stands out in your mind? Like just hopefully a positive experience where you really felt like, yes, like, this is what makes me feel like part of the community, but also at home, right? Like my home away from home.
I think that came in college probably more so, because I think that's the first time that I felt tested in that, where my home wasn't even, like I didn't go home every day after school, right?
Yeah,
and I didn't go home every weekend like a lot of my peers did. So finding that community on the college campus to me became like a moment of mental wellness and priority more than I think the average student at that time. And I think two sources of that provided that for me. One is I called them 1008 and Follow 8. So 1008 was the room that I lived in for 2 years with my best friend from high school. We actually lived in the same room for all 4 years, the last 2 years being 1008. She is my sister, like to this day. We moved in together every year. She stayed an extra semester. I moved her in. I went to Penn. She moved me in. I went to New Haven for this job. She moved me in. And then when I became a homeowner in Hamden, she moved me in. So we've moved each other every time. And recently, so La Casa has a weekly cena a las 6, dinner at 6. And so it was my introduction to the La Casa community. She logged in on Zoom. She was like, yep, I'm going to be there. So that buddy, that person. And I think a part of it is because we had a relationship in high school, she not only felt like a safe haven at UMass, she reminded me of where we came from, like kind of always bringing us back to the roots of it all. And then Follow 8 is the semester that I joined my sorority, which is Sigma Lambda Gamma National Sorority Incorporated. I became a chapter founder, the Kappa Delta chapter, and it's 11 of us that did it together. And so to start a student org was a lot of work. And so we invested a lot of time, and then go through our member education process. Those are my line sisters to this day. Like it's not something that died off when we graduated. Now a majority of us have kids, so they're line cousins, and we see each other like twice a year, where there's like a Friendsgiving, we bring all the kids together, or a summer pool party. For that one, we leave the kids at home, but nonetheless, there's a lot of bonding. And so finding those pieces where you can take the mask off on a college campus and like be yourself, and then put the mask back on if you need to, and go forth feeling recharged. Yeah,
definitely. When you shared about your college experience, like especially as a first generation student, how does that sort of guide the way that you support students now at Yale?
I think finances always being on the top of mind. I think I haven't even shut off the FGLI identity as an adult now with a master's degree in a home. Like it's still something that very much colors how I choose to engage financial literacy for my personal life, and certainly within La Casa. Some of those things is, how do I support student orgs or student staff members that want to do events without having them spend money up front to do a reimbursement? How can we best facilitate that to do like a Grubhub order through La Casa's account, or an Amazon order through La Casa's account? You don't have to put it on your personal card. And how much of our events and initiatives can be mostly free, to be honest, or of low cost to anybody that wants to attend. And I think a lot about one of the programs that my predecessor and I started is La Bienvenida, which happens on Move-In Day. And it's a Spanish language welcome to the loved ones of first year students on Move-In Day, to welcome them as well and recognize we're going to feed you lunch and talk to you for an hour. Like everything is in Spanish, so you feel like you have at least a taste of like who you're leaving your students with, so you feel welcomed too. But I certainly didn't have that benefit at UMass, and not just because the program didn't exist. My parents couldn't even move me into college. So it was my best friend's family who moved me in. And so we think of ways of like how, particularly in a place like Yale, when we have so many students coming from across the country or the world, it's an increased likelihood that we're going to have students not like moving in alone. And how do we take care of those students as well, whether it's through the PLs being an extra set of hands or eyes or shoulder to lean on Move-In Day, where you're kind of like bombarded with that message all over. And Caregivers Weekend that just happened, what programming can we offer for those students that don't have loved ones coming, but you know that their loved ones love them, so how can we engage them?
That's amazing. I love that. Even as you said, like even though you've had achievements, since your college years, right? That's still like your inner, identity, right? And that you never really move past that. Like at the core, like that's who you are, and that's how you have developed your like caring, about students who are in this similar situation, and hopefully that they don't feel like they're alone, coming to campus. I love that you shared, how all of these different families, right, kind of helped you along the way too. Do you find that you do the same, like on campus as well, like that you've kind of developed these pockets of families for whether for students or even, even for yourself? Like,
yeah, I think so. Particularly, I'll answer for myself first. If I'm a woman of color in a predominantly white institution. So for me, that is always important to find other folks of a similar experience to kind of like hold each other and affirm each other or even challenge each other, but coming from a place of understanding without having to over-explain yourself. People have done that for me as I entered here, and I hope to do that for incoming folks, whether they are students, undergrad, graduate, or just new colleagues that are coming into the space, even faculty members, and being able to be like a person that you can give safe eye contact to if something feels off, or like, I just need a moment to vent to somebody so I can go back and feel strong in myself. Right. And then I think for students, at first, when I joined into higher ed, I was very close to their age. So it felt more relational and buddy. And like now I'm trying to keep up with the slang and like got a TikTok just so I can open the links that I get sent. But I have to admit that the age gap is becoming wider and the lifestyle is becoming different, right? Like when I first came to Yale, I wasn't a parent yet. I wasn't even engaged. And now I have two little ones at home. So just certain things feel different. Yeah. So I think my role is now more so being like a phone operator, like, oh, you're interested in this? I know a student that's interested in this. Let me try to connect you with their permission, of course, of how we can find community, or like, oh, you like that hobby? Did you know that we have at least 3 student orgs that do said hobby? And being that phone operator to connect folks without it being, it doesn't matter that you have a relationship with me, is do you have relationships and how can I help foster those?
Right. That's awesome. So many of your colleagues, myself included, would describe you as a builder. So what, what drives you, in terms of creating the spaces? Like what keeps you, what fuels you, what keeps you going?
Yeah, I think if you boil it down to the most basic ingredients of like what makes up Carolina, like I love organizing in general. And I don't even mean in the cool, like event planner girl or even community organizing. It's just the literal organization of things. I love building solid foundations. And I think, honestly, that goes back to not having solid foundations, always having to move and start over. There's something very special to me to have the opportunity to be in a place long enough where you can build something that stays stable no matter how hard it gets rocked. And I think that's particularly important in the work that we do in this day and age when it comes to higher ed or the cultural centers or anything else that we feel is changing and shifting. How hard is it going to shift if your foundation was set? What was your why? What was your purpose? And I think if I always go back to what is my why, what is my purpose, it kind of keeps going. And it may look a little different. Now I've been here over 8 years. And so several class years have gone by. While the events and experiences may be different, or the personalities and the relationships, if you boil it down to its like nuts and bolts, the foundations are still the same. Like the experiences are really similar. It just looked a little different because this social media app exists now that didn't exist back then. But the relationship building part, you're still a nervous first year student or you're still a first gen low income student. And so now you have an app where you can get coupons, whereas back then you had to clip them, but the hustle is still the same. And so I think understanding that most things are made up of the same ingredients helps me also manage how overwhelming it can be to navigate in ever-shifting experiences.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm curious, like, before I jump from like your college years to being here at Yale, is there like a particular mentor or person that stands out in your mind that kind of helped you transition from, college student to, oh my gosh, I have to, I have to go out and work and I develop a career. Was there a particular mentor or someone that just comes to mind?
My reaction is not a one person answer.
Yes,
it's a multitude of people. And I think I have to be honest, a part of that transition was very influenced from the trauma of losing my mom during my senior year of college.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. And so that happened in March, and I was graduating in May. And my major at the time was communication disorders, which today would be called speech, language, and hearing sciences. I did not do my observation hours until senior year. And that was not wise on my part because I realized through observation hours that this was really meaningful and important work, but it wasn't work that I could do, that I could carry. So I had no idea where I was going to live or what kind of career I was going to pursue after my bachelor's. And there was the family dynamic of it all, of losing who was essentially the matriarch of our household and our extended family. So a part of it was survival and grief that just kind of colored immediate next steps. And it was my husband today, we were together then, his uncle hired me in the nonprofit that he was working in. And it worked with Boston Public School students by providing academic mentors for the students that weren't struggling the most, but they could fall in the cracks and become the most struggling. And so I was both the volunteer recruitment person and the donor recruitment person, which is like working with two very different sides of the house. But it was my own volunteering experience that made me realize how much I missed being on a college campus. So I mentored this little girl. They matched me with her because she moved to Boston in middle school from Dominican Republic. And they were like, you have a very similar story. She needs a maternal influence. I was like, I am 21. I don't know about maternal, but I can be a adult woman in her life. And it was through conversations with her, because she kept asking me so much about what I studied and what is college like, and she wants to be a nurse and and that I was like, wow, I'm like reminiscing a lot about UMass. Like, I don't want another bachelor's. How do I do this? And one of my line sisters was getting her master's at the time in higher ed. She was like, you can work on a college campus with what you're doing with that middle school student, but on a college campus. Word. So that's when I decided to get my master's and kind of like did a career shift in a way, but it was a series of events and people that helped kind of line up that pathway, and being vulnerable and asking for help and asking for guidance. And some people knowing that I should have asked and I wasn't asking, but they offered it anyways. So it's kind of like this two-way relationship where if you can extend yourself, please do.
That it brings up an interesting point. Like you said, like people who you may not have asked for whatever your reasons were at the time, but people who saw that you needed help and they offered it anyway. I think it's so important, especially in this kind of environment, right? Like just seeing someone who may be struggling, and maybe they don't speak up because they're, I don't know, either you're embarrassed or afraid, or you really internalize. I tend to internalize a lot, and but I'm so appreciative of someone who, it's almost like they're taking a leap, because sometimes you don't even know how the person will receive it. If they'll receive it very well or not. And so it's like you're taking this risk to say, hey, can I help you do X, Y, Z? So did you find that you felt that way too? Like were you internalizing a lot of just what you were going through, and like you said, that losing your mom? And
I don't think so. Perhaps depending on how personal the offer became, and more so about the judgment that I was projecting. Like nobody was judging me for my circumstances. One of the things that I felt like is because I didn't know where I was going to live, my now mother-in-law quickly realized that there was something that she could do to help me in that transition. So I actually did not go back to where my mom was living, which was in Florida at the time with my dad and my brother. I stayed with her. And my then boyfriend, now husband, wasn't even in the house. He was studying at Georgia Tech. And so her and I were roommates without him. And that is what's the word? Like that was a catalyst in my life where she provided a sense of stability and home and peace that I significantly needed because of the big loss that I had just faced and entering this young adulthood that I didn't know what I was going to do. And I didn't have to worry about like where my head was at or where the next meal was going to come from. And she didn't even engage me much, right? Like she wasn't an overwhelming presence in my life. I think she recognized like when a person's grieving, they also just need alone time and just kind of need to breathe. And she provided that for me. But there were moments, and I think a part of it is a cultural upbringing thing. Like I felt like I was taking up too much space. Like I was a burden to her, and I felt myself shrinking and trying to like be as quiet as possible in the house, or like never leaving a dish, and just having my presence be as minimized as possible. Where she had to sit down with me a couple of times because she knew what was happening. Maybe didn't quite understand where it was coming from, but constantly affirming me like, "This is my home. This is okay. She is not bothered. I'm not a burden or anything." And obviously her son, my husband, affirming that on the other side, like translating for her and like, she's not lying to you, girl. Like we love you. We're here for you. So I think it depends on how vulnerable the help was versus like my line sister noticing these trends and just offering me, have you thought of this? Like not once did that feel like I was appreciative because she put language to something that I didn't know was a career. Like nobody goes to university thinking I'm going to work at a university unless it's like maybe a faculty member or something. But the idea of being an administrator was simply offered as an option. I was like, oh, and then having the trust in myself and others trusting me to know that I can carry that information. You don't have to do the work for me. It's like, oh, let me just like start Googling and learning about programs and how do I do this, that. And so seeing the capability also, I think is important when you're offering that help, like not assuming that that person's incapable and you have to do for them. You're not here to save them. You're here to guide a little bit.
Yeah. I love that story. I you know, as you were sharing that, it made me think too, like I feel like it's almost ingrained in certain people, like that once you've been through something, like especially when it's traumatic, that you want to find ways to help people so that as they're going through something similar, that they're, you know, that they're just not feeling how you felt, you know, through the process. Absolutely. And I remember, you know, as you were sharing that story, you know, you were asking me earlier, can I ask you questions? But
is this the time?
Is this the time? I'll share a story. But yeah, you know, I think about, you know, when I had my older son, I was a single mom, and you know, I had family who helped support me through all of that, right? But you know, going through the process, like as you know, like finding daycare, finding childcare, finding like, you know, you want to try to provide as normal of a childhood as possible, you know, being in a single parent household. So it was like trying to find a play group, you know, like trying to find resources, trying to, you know, I wanted him to do well in academically. So, you know, trying to find those resources. And, you know, thinking back, it's like, yeah, that kind of fueled me too, like in terms of wanting to help people, especially because I know, you know, it's like, I know that struggle of like, you know, worrying about healthcare, worrying about, you know, and this was before I even started working here at Yale. So it's like, you know, you go through all of that, and I don't think it ever leaves you. Nope. Yeah. So it's like you carry that on in your own work. So yeah. And I that's so amazing. I love that. You know, like you said, is like your now mother-in-law took you in, and you were trying to minimize your presence or not feel like a burden, but it's like, you know, but she knew that you know, gave you the space that you needed. And and that's such an amazing story. So now I'm wondering, Carolina, if we could, unless you had a question for me, I don't know.
You answered you already answered your one. Question? Yes, which is like, can you share a story? So, and you did that.
Yeah. Check the box. So in terms of, you know, your work here at Yale, you know, La Casa is definitely an amazing, you know, it's an amazing space and a cornerstone for campus life for students for decades. So for those who do not know La Casa, would you like to share a little bit about what makes it such a special place and your work there?
Yeah, La Casa has become Like La Casa literally translates to the house. And the motto of it is La Casa es su casa, which means this house is your house. And that has become true for many students, staff, faculty. But I would say even myself as an administrator is the first. Perhaps my perception of La Casa is very personal. And so like take this as it fits to whoever's listening. But it is the first place where I was able to and encouraged to blend my professional and personal identities. I didn't have to leave my personal hobbies or even my correct name pronunciation or anything at home. It was just like, come as your fullest self. And that was extended to me by my predecessor and also by our students. Like our students love when administrators show a little personality or transparency or just quirkiness that makes us click and tick. And it allows us to all be in the gallery, which is on the main floor together, just talking about different things, whether it is the latest TikTok trend that they're trying to teach me or like news or stories from home. And it's very much a living, breathing house, but it isn't just the building. We do have the privilege of being a 3-story building on campus. Many cultural centers are much smaller than that across the country if they still exist. And with this privilege means that we are also a living, breathing community. I think back to when the pandemic happened and we had to close the building and La Casa still thrived because we weren't restricted to the physical boundaries of a campus or our building. Our community existed on social media or Zoom or newsletters and just became we shifted quickly. And that's because the relationships are what make La Casa. And by the motto, La Casa es su casa, you make La Casa what you want it to be. We have students that become engaged very early on in the summer already asking, or during Bulldog Days, how can I work here? And it's like, all right, the application's going to happen.
Oh, that's awesome.
Then we have students that maybe become engaged a little later in their Yale career. And we have students that don't become engaged at all, but they come back as alumni and they want to help and open doors and extend that hand. And now because of La Bienvenida, our community has expanded to students' parents. Like there are students on staff whose parents I met before I met the student because the parent was so excited about the space during something like Multicultural Open House or Bulldog Days. And one of our head student coordinators, I've known his mom longer than I've known him because of that kind of energy. Really? And now these parents sometimes serve on panels for us to talk to incoming families in their language about their experience with their students and kind of providing that like peace of mind. Like I've been through it and I am familiar with the feelings that you're having. Because I can only tell them so much as an administrator, right? Like, they got this, don't worry about it, I'm here. But to hear it from a parent that knows what it's like to pack your students' bags and ship them off thousands of miles away and they'll be fine, that's been really special. So La Casa, for me, has also become a place of personal growth. We are the first building at Yale that is named after a woman of color, and she happens to be a Black Latina like me, from Puerto Rico, like me, born in Carolina, Puerto Rico, which is my name. And that's where I was born. Really? And so even being in a space where I identify with the namesake is really special. And where my name gets pronounced immediately correct is really special. And
did I pronounce it correctly?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's not Carolina. We'll say that. It's not Carolina. It's Carolina or Carolina. And in being in that space, it is my hope that is always a feeling, regardless of what decade we're in, that people walk away with, that they can be their fullest self and they don't have to hide certain pieces of them, but it's also a place to grow. Like I understand my Latinidad more today because I work at La Casa and the lessons that both my predecessor and students have shared with me. And it's been a mutually educational relationship. It's not just me being teacher in a blank slate. We're all in community and learning from each other.
Right. That's so awesome. And I imagine, that's what keeps you, wakes you up every day and you love your job and come to work. And it's, like you said, it's a place where you can be yourself and learn from the students and they learn from you. And, so that must be amazing to, I feel like it's a luxury to be able to get up and come to a job that you actually love. Right. So I want to talk about the programs that you mentioned, like you, and if, I'm not going to try to pronounce in Spanish. So, but you did mention like the dinner at 6.
Yes.
Okay. And then, even in general, like how you all got through, the pandemic. Yeah. So what, tell me a little bit more about the programming at La Casa and what kind of, what inspires you? Like, how do you come up with the programming, or how do you interact with students? Do students help?
Yes, it is a very student-led space. We try not to put the burden on the students. At the end of the day, they are here to get their degrees. But La Casa could not function from our foundational history, where it was founded by students, through today. We couldn't exist without them. And so a part of that has been always to work in collaboration with them. Cena Las Seis was born, I want to say in 2013, if not before, and that was born out of students. The Latin Excellence Showcase, that was also born out of students. I helped obviously coordinate and facilitate, but proposed by 2 student coordinators at La Casa. The Latina Retreat that we do every year since 2023, I want to say, I've put students in charge of that retreat. Of course, I'm here to like sign contracts and book buses and all of that. And I still am a part of the programming, but I want it to be student informed, because if we're asking students to come to an off-campus location for a full day, I need it to be relevant to the students. Everything is honestly student informed and student led. Awesome. I've come up with programs, but they have certainly grown those programs in ways that I don't think I had the skill sets or the vision for. And I think a part of my role is providing that microphone to them and providing the resources to make these things happen. And obviously set boundaries and set guidelines and challenge also is like, well, does this make sense? Is this the best use of our time, our resources, et cetera? But once it becomes a two-way conversation, being able to co-create. And if it's a no, maybe it's a not right now. Or maybe it's like, how can we do this at another time? Right. So also measuring that there's short-termness here does not mean that it's not worth exploring at another point.
That's amazing. I love that. How many students? Because I remember when I visited La Casa, I saw the board with all of their photos, and so you have like how many
on staff?
Yeah,
we have 14 student coordinators, 14 peer liaisons, and 3 graduate assistants.
Wow! And how do you manage all of that? Like, are they really great about self-managing and kind of just running?
I think they've gotten better throughout the years. And I think I'd like to say I played a role in that. Because I was supervising the the student coordinators before as the former assistant director and associate director. When it came to that, like implementing operational practices at La Casa, that's where I really came in and left them a lot of templates that even in my parental leave absences, they've been able to run the center without me because all the templates are there. And they bring their own flavor, of course, and mistakes happen, absolutely, but they're pretty self-sufficient. And we now have a new assistant director, which I'm so grateful for. And through her third-party objective perspective as a new person, she does believe that they are a very cool group to work with and that they're very responsible and stuff. So I think that
awesome.
The answer officially is that. And I inherited an amazing peer liaison team and graduate assistant team that our interim leadership left us last year. And a lot of them are returners in one way or another. So it's about them passing down trainings and information to each other as well. Like, we honor a lot of traditions and history, but we are very open to the shifting dynamics of everything and how do we get creative to work with each other. So it's a lot of co-management because it is only 2 full-time professionals. So I supervise the PLs and the GAs, and our assistant director supervises student coordinators, but she also advises all of our affiliate organizations, which we have 19 of this year.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, and I think that's something that many people may not realize, that, with the cultural centers, it's usually 2 people
the whole thing,
running the whole thing. And it's a lot. Like, your days must be extremely long.
They are.
Yeah.
Yes. They are.
So I don't know how you manage that and have 2 little ones.
I don't know yet. And maybe it's because they're little to the point that they're not questioning me too much yet. Like, it's 1 and 4. They just know me as I am, but it's certainly a lot of community. I have to admit that the students have been so understanding of my transition into parenthood that they're like, girl, it's 5:30. Daycare, they're going to charge you. And so they're really mindful of our well-being, or the times that I've had to, like, I have to go on Zoom because little one's sick at home from daycare, or I can't meet with you at all because little one is so sick that it's just going to be a distraction in our Zoom meeting. And not once have I ever gotten pushback from a student in the past 4 years of that. And so it is something that I hope they continue for also non-parents, because I don't think people should be an external caretaker in order to be able to take care of themselves outside of the workplace.
Definitely. And I think that makes a huge difference too, is understanding, like, we're human, we have whether it's children or, maybe your senior parent or,
Exactly.
Your family member or whatever's going on, that we have that understanding,
Right.
Or great, giving each other grace to,
Right.
You have to do what you have to do. Because again, ultimately, to me, it leads to, yes, this is why I love working here, because I'm recognized as a human being.
Right. Right.
So you also mentioned the major renovations at La Casa too. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, like how you came up with the vision for the space? Or
Yeah, collaboration. At the end of the day, collaboration with the director from Student Accessibility Services. And I was always, because I had learned from my predecessor that our ADA ramp wasn't installed till like 2015, which is super late. And we just kind of, I think it was through Zoom, like the pandemic inspired a lot of like, how are we being accessible in general since the building is closed? And so I remember on Zoom programs, people were doing the closed captioning or providing sign language for people that were hard of hearing. And so once we reopened the building, it's like, well, what are we doing in person to make sure that these good practices stay in place? And so I was like, I am not the expert of accommodations. Who can I involve to have a conversation about this? So it was with that director of SAS and a facilities like capital project management person that came and did a walkthrough. And like the dream would be that we would get an elevator in the building.
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen. So until then, how can we make the first floor at least fully accessible? Because at that time, it was only accessible like the main gallery and a small gallery attached to it in a hallway. You couldn't, and the bathroom. You couldn't even go into the kitchen technically if you had a wheelchair because our doorway wasn't wide enough.
Narrow,
So with that, a project was approved to make those renovations happen where we lowered some of the countertops. We removed the cabinet under the sink so a wheelchair could fit. We already have 2 microwaves, but I made sure to add a third one, and people think this is excessive, but it's because the third one is on the lowered countertop for a person to be able to use. And we got upgraded stoves so that the knobs weren't all the way in the back, but they were more accessible to the front.
Awesome.
It took a while. It took a lot of advocacy, a lot of pushing. And I remember getting rhetoric of like, well, did anybody complain about this? And my pushback was always like, why do we have to wait for somebody to complain about this? Why can't we be preventive? In that project, I snuck in a baby changing table into the ADA bathroom because I had learned of a PhD student. At that time, I was a mom already. There was a PhD student that would come with her kiddo all the time. And I was like, well, I'm not the only one that brings a child in here and needs somewhere to change a diaper. And so we added that. And I think my doula lens kind of influenced that part because then I realized like we are here for graduate and professional students and staff and faculty and New Haven community members. So the likelihood of seeing, likelihood of seeing children in this space is likelier than in a academic classroom perhaps. And so how can I make this space also fully accessible, not for you to just bring your whole self, but your extended self as well. And that may include like little ones. And so that's one of the pieces that is so simple, but to me means a lot that La Casa has a baby changing station.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love that advocacy because it, again, even just thinking back to, especially when I had my younger son is 11 or he turned 12 today. He turned 12. He's 12. So yeah. So, but I remember what it was like to like, oh gosh, you go somewhere and you have a little one and it's like, there's no changing table or I can't nurse or I can't, and feeling stressed because it's like, okay, then we have to find somewhere to go. And, so I love that there are people like you that kind of to advocate for that because sometimes you experience it, but it's, after you experience that moment of, okay, there's
inconvenience or whatever.
This inconvenience. I don't, where am I going to go complain somewhere? Who do I complain to? And, I've left. So why does it, now it's, not that it's not an issue, but I've kind of moved on to my new challenge for the day, and having people who advocate for things like that is so important. So I'm so happy to hear that you did that because that's amazing. Because again, it also opens up, like you said, that you have the Yale College students, but you have grad students and other professionals who may at first think, oh, maybe I can't really bring my child to this space or I can't participate in an event because it may not be child friendly, And now, I think even just seeing a changing table will totally...
It's a little nod.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, okay, so kids are welcome here.
Right.
Right? What about... so that's an awesome story. So I'm wondering about, all of your hats here at Yale, because you wear many. So you've been an advisor. You are an advisor, Davenport Fellow. You were an interim program manager in student affairs. So what did you kind of learn along the way, like in terms of, leading in a way that keeps students in the center, or maybe that, what experiences do you kind of take away from wearing those hats, or maybe you wear all three hats at the same, multiple hats at the same time?
I think it depends on the day of the week and the meeting that I'm in. And it's like, oh yeah, these parts of me are relevant in here. And I think that's been the biggest lesson, is for me to be comfortable to bring the different parts of me into all the spaces, regardless of the topic. Something like being a mom and being a doula is what allowed me to do that advocacy for the baby changing table. Same applies for being an advisor, whether it's in Davenport or the student orgs, or now on the committee level of like policy shaping more so for student orgs, of always thinking back to like, what are the very experience-based informations that I have. Like there's value in all of that, even if I feel very out of place. Like, yes, I've been here for a long time, but being a director versus an assistant or associate director is very different when it comes to the level of like visibility that I now have, or the tables and meetings that I'm invited to versus before. And so it still feels like a very new, like I'm learning the rest of Yale now versus I'm an expert at La Casa. And so when I'm entering meetings now, I'm often relying on my experiences as an AD of like, this is what the student orgs need. And this is what I recall from all of my advising sessions with them, or these are the practices that I've implemented. When I became the interim program manager, that was out of a Yale necessity. It was a COVID pandemic, hiring freeze. There was a loss. And so 3 of us divided that role. And I was in charge of those, like UOFC. And a lot of the practices that I implemented with them was stuff that I was doing at La Casa. And it just kind of made sense to me to do it with a larger student body, with their collaboration and buy-in, of course. Like never implementing something against their will, particularly as an advisor, right? Like I'm not a supervisor, so it is still up to them. But here are the practices that I've implemented at La Casa, and here's the proof of how it's worked. And do you think this works with your population? And at the time, the UFC chair was super receptive to what I was bringing to the table. And it was also the pandemic. So it was just like, we can't do what we were doing and we need to do something. Right. So what is the easiest way to pivot? There's no need to recreate the wheel. Here are the things that have worked, and how do we shift it so that it is adaptable to your situation at the time. So, but it requires confidence in the fact that you have experience and these are valid, regardless if the room doesn't look like you anymore, or that you're the newest voice in the room. It goes back to when I hire a first year student, I let them know at the first staff meeting, I want to hear your voice. You were hired for a reason. You don't have to worry that you have a senior next to you. Like you have ideas and perspectives, please bring them. And then I have to be a big girl and apply that feedback to myself.
Yeah, I know. That's so true, right? In terms of, as you were sharing about changing gears from being an assistant director to a director, and, now that you're sitting at tables that you didn't before. And it made me think about, I've been participating in this leadership program for the past 10 months, and a lot of it covered moving from, especially when you've been like promoted, right? Like you come into a role maybe as you're doing a lot of doing, right? You're doing a lot of the stuff, the tasks, and shifting to a leadership role is actually really difficult, because we did this interesting exercise where it was like a pie chart, and we had to figure out, okay, how much are in terms of a director, which is usually more of the sort of strategic side, right? The strategic planning, right? And you're at tables, like you said, with like senior leaders here at the university. And how much of your time, we had to do a pie chart to show, okay, how much of your time are you actually doing versus leading? And when we went through to figure out, okay, well, what qualifies as doing, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing a lot of doing. Did you find that too? Like, were you?
I'm still trying to decipher that right now. So I think I started my role officially in June, but it was after almost a year-long parental leave. So I was very separated from the AD role for a long time that I think mentally has actually worked to my benefit to be able to transition to the director role because I'm not as attached or in the routine of like, yep, this is what I do every Monday or Tuesday or whatever. But I did catch myself slipping yesterday. So yesterday being the first day back from fall break and I had taken a week off. But it's the first week where I'm not in hiring AD mode or opening the center for the school year or Heritage Month. Like it's the first like rest of the school year kind of Monday flow. And I found myself going back to AD things where I was like spending way too much time on the newsletter. And I was like, okay, I need to let this go. Like I caught myself in the middle of it, even though I did a lot of edits. And I messaged the new assistant director. I was like, hey, this is what I did. So you don't go ahead and duplicate that stuff, but go ahead and revise the rest and send it off. I've done my part. It's ready. So it is tough. And I think a part of it is just obviously like routine and being in that position for a while. I think a part of it is just like my personal strengths too. Like it's just stuff that operational stuff has always been a place of comfort, I guess, for me. I used to get paid when I was little to organize the groceries at my house. So it's just like this is grown and breaded into me. And there are parts of me that are super excited about being able to do this like strategic planning kind of vision setting more. But to your point earlier, it is a team of two. And I now have the responsibility
sometimes you have no choice
welcoming in a new assistant director, and I'm not trying to burn her out. And so like, how do I also protect her energy and keep that balance and get the needs met? And so part of it has to be a year-long and ongoing and redundant conversation over and over again of like, what are the priorities here? What is urgent? What is important? What would be nice? And kind of shifting those pieces over and over until you find what's fitting. And what's fitting right now may not fit next year, right? And so having that level of flexibility too is going to be key. So it is something that I'm still actively thinking about as recent as yesterday.
It's to me too, it's a daily thing where it's like, I'll find myself, because it's I don't know. It's like autopilot, right? And I, just immediately start digging in like, oh yeah, I know how to fix, especially if I know how to do something, I'm like, I know how to fix it. And then it's like, I start doing it. I'm like, what am I doing?
Right.
And I have to kind of separate myself and realize, and it kind of goes into that whole thing of like mentoring and sharing knowledge, helping the next person to eventually lead to two. And it's like, okay, I have to sort of take off that hat and let them wear the hat for a little while. And so for me, it's a challenge too, because I tend to just go, just like we were talking about in the hallway, if you call me, I tend to answer immediately. If you don't tell everyone. No, I'm kidding. But
now everybody knows.
Everyone knows it's on tape. But that's just how I function. And I don't, it's really difficult for me to dial that back a little bit, but that's just how I function, because I get anxiety actually if I have
something sitting there too long.
If I have to do things on my to-do list, I like to scratch them off and move on to the next thing. And if I can take care of it in 10 minutes, I usually do. And sometimes it's really hard for me to just like, okay,
what is it?
Is it something I really need to?
Right. Is the to-do list now delegate this task to blah, blah, blah. And the to-do list making time for strategic planning and like the big picture stuff. Sometimes I feel like the big picture things can get so overwhelming that we find peace and comfort in, let me just do this. Let me quickly fix this Clover
thing. It's almost like my brain feels like, I'm at home.
Exactly. And I think a part of it too is how we've been socialized, particularly as women of color or moms. Like you're always in doing and serving mode. And a part of it is like you may be, or at least I find myself thinking a lot about my AD and student staff and how much burden am I putting on them by asking them to do certain things, and how can I protect them from that when I can just do it myself. But then I have to realize if I'm not giving them that task, I'm not giving myself the time to do the things that they definitely can't help me with. They definitely can't go travel to whatever state with admissions to recruit students, blah, 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 blah. So let them do the Canva marketing thing. Get out of Canva, log off, and go do the other parts that they're looking to you to do.
And that too, like I experience it even with my older son. It's like I'm not I'm not helping him become independent if I just constantly take on things because I think I'm protecting him or, you know, whatever. Yeah. It's like I have to prepare him and sometimes let him, and that's the hard part. Sometimes let them fail.
Even though you see it coming a mile away. Yeah. I know.
Because how old are you?
My little ones are 1 and 4. 1 and 4. And my 1-year-old, I'm letting him fall all the time because he's learning how to walk. And so it's like, take the hands back, like let him, like he's not going to fall from the ground. He's going to be fine. He's right there. He's only yay high. So it's like a 5-inch drop. He's going to be fine. But it's something that you're protective, even with my 4-year-old, I'm constantly, and she notices the shift. Like she knows when I'm being like snuggly and cuddly and we love that. And this morning she was like, you're not, you switched when we came into the bathroom. I was like, well, yes, because I need you to brush your teeth and you're a big girl.
We got to go. I know. It's so true. You know, when I think back to when my kids were that age, and it's like, it was hard for me to just kind of let go and let them fall. Like, I'll share another story. But, so my younger son, he, before he was born, we found out he had this like lung condition. He had a cyst in his lung. And, it was scary because, many babies don't survive this condition, but he was fine. He ended up having surgery when he was 6 months old. Wow. And, I was like nervous Nell for the longest time. I like just afraid of everything, but that week, so he came home after he had the surgery, he was in the hospital for a week, came home, and, the surgeon, they were like, well, how's he doing? They called to check on him. And, I told him, well, he had one of those little jungle bouncy things, and he said, let him bounce. And I was just like, what?
What if the lung drops?
Yes. I was like, are you crazy? Right. He's like, no, let him go back to normal activity. Like, let him. And I was just like, I don't know about that, but I had to let go and let him do it because he loved that thing, so let him do it. And then the following week, because he was in daycare, he said, yeah, let him go back to daycare. I'm like, Germ City? Are you crazy? Right. Same thing. He's like, he will be fine.
Yeah, they're resilient.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It is hard to believe.
It was so hard to let go and just let him, even though I was a nervous wreck, but just to let him go, let him go. And he was fine. He's 12, so, but it, just not feeling protective and, trying to shield him from everything. And that's such a hard thing to let go of.
Yeah. I think a lot about the parents here, honestly. And when I meet them on move-in day, and it's like, I admire you so much for trusting me, this complete stranger thousands of miles away, and to trust your kid and yourself in that process, because you've done everything you can at this point for them to go ahead and do that. And I feel like my mom did that. So I think about her often, where when I graduated high school, I went to college and she moved to Puerto Rico. And people gave her a really hard time about that. And she was like, people do this all the time. They send their kids to a place that they don't know at all. Carolina knows Massachusetts. Like, she's going to be fine. And so those are the reality check moments that I have to have with myself, where I'm just letting him wobble a little bit. It's like, fine. Like, you could take a little bump here and there. Thinking about the long term kind of grounds me in that sense, but it is hard when you've known them as a bundle of cells.
Yes, exactly.
It's crazy.
Exactly. So in terms of, much of your work, you're balancing all of these different things and like we said, the strategic planning and the high level stuff with the everyday stuff, right? How do you find balance? You have two little ones. Like, what does Carolina do in terms of just having a balance for yourself? Yeah,
another learning moment for sure. But I think this season in my life has taught me to ask for help, but like to be adamant and specific about that help, not just be like, it would be nice and passive aggressive. No. Like, hit up the direct person and here's the very specific request that I'm asking. A part of that. So last week was fall break here and I took the whole week off, but I didn't want to just be off from work. I needed a break from the little ones too. And so we asked my parents-in-law. So my husband asked his parents if they could come down and take care of the kids while we escaped. And they were like,
so
word,
nice.
yes, let's do it.
Yeah.
So having community, to your point about your earlier experiences, like leaning on that community where possible and making it easy for them to lean toward you.
Yeah.
Something that my therapist told me a while back, because I had this big problem, and I think I still do, the idea of taking up space and too much burden on others. And she was like, give people the honor of loving you. Like, they have told you that they want to help. They have told you that they love you. And so let them live that truth. Like, don't insult them by saying, that's not true. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't love me. Like, no, if that's the case, let it be.
Yeah.
So being able to lean into that and making time for those breaks. Like, I knew, and I've known this for years because of my predecessor, fall break is the time that we take off. That's it. That is our post-Heritage Month recovery period. And so when our new AD was hired, I'm also implementing that for her. Hey, by the way, these are the dates that I want you to already block as off so you can go make plans.
That's awesome.
And so I think I'm learning to make plans to look forward to something and then have those measurements in place to be able to take that time off or be able to unplug a bit.
Yeah.
I do less, I think. Like, I agree to less things. And I'm a natural introvert, so that kind of works in my favor in that sense of like, I'm not going to do all the outings, but I'll do once in a while. Or I will basically try to work from home where possible so I can address needs. Because to your point, when my task list is growing, that brings me more anxiety. And so like, how can I multitask some of these things where both needs can be addressed at the same time, and it gives me a peaceful night? Because what I do notice is if my day is stressful, I'm not my best self at home. And so even the transition time, I used to live in New Haven, walking distance from La Casa.
Oh, wow.
For 1 year. That was my first year. And once I moved to Hampton,
never left work.
Yes, but I was also like bumping into work on my way home.
Oh, yeah.
And so once I moved to Hampton, I became a driving person. Those like 15, 20 minutes in the car are like miracle changers for me, where I get to listen to a podcast, probably this one in the future. But with that mental shift of buying myself that time to like be that stereotype of like the parent that's in the driveway in the car, just taking a breather. Because it lets me transition so that I am putting on a new hat, but the hat stays on and it is a lovely hat, and it is not like a hat on top of a hat that's falling off and all that. So I think it's learning how to like buy those pockets of peace, whether long or short, asking for help, and leaning into the things that you like. Like, I'm not an avid reader, despite all these beautiful books behind us. Like, that's just not my love language, but I love trash TV. I love comfort shows. I love Marvel movies. Harry Potter's the thing that I'm binging right now. So, like, being okay with it. Like, I'll go to one of these, like, work affairs, and so-and-so's, did you read the last? No, but did you see the latest, like, RuPaul's Drag Race? And did you see who got eliminated? Like, just, I'm being comfortable with it.
That's awesome.
And I get to teach other people about other stuff. It's like, word, I'll put that book on my audiobook list.
Right. Oh my exactly. It's so true, right? It's going back to what you said, giving. I love that you mentioned giving your staff the space, or your AD the space to take that time, because I think that that's probably one mistake that you can make, is becoming like this workaholic. Especially, like you said, if you're living close to campus and you really never leave. And, believe it or not, like for me, after the pandemic, when we first started slowly coming back to the office, I was like, ooh, me, because I needed that separation. Because during the pandemic, I was working late hours, and it just, like you said, it wasn't creating my best self for my kids. And then to me, it wasn't, and sometimes it's great for folks who work remotely, and that's great. But for me, it wasn't good, because I didn't have that separation in my day. Like, I need my day to stop. Right. And then I put on my other hat, or like you said, oh man, if you ever see me in the parking garage, because sometimes I'll just sit in the, for about 10 minutes when I come in. I just kind of sit in my car in silence, and just kind of think. I don't know, whatever comes to mind, but I need that kind of just,
Yes.
Yeah.
Let your brain do its thing.
Exactly. So you shared so much about the center. So I want to touch on, what inspired you to become a doula?
Yeah. I became a doula because of my doulas.
Oh, wow.
I learned that I was pregnant in December 2020. So in the pandemic, very thick in it. And being originally from Boston, but this is a time where everybody's socially distant. We had no loved ones in the area. And at that point, my mom had already passed a couple of years before that. And then during my pregnancy, my dad passed away.
Oh my gosh,
and so my immediate sources of support of like examples of parents were gone. And Tristan's parents were being very careful.
Your sons?
Tristan being my husband.
Oh, your husband. I was like, wait a second. That's my son's name.
I know. So they were being supportive, but from a distance. And I'm being an educator and being an operations girl. It's like, who are the experts of this experience? But I was also very cognizant and mindful of the racialized dynamics of a woman of color being pregnant, particularly a Black identifying woman or even an obese woman. And so I wanted holistic care. I've always been a spiritualist person, so I wanted somebody that can help. Because my first OBGYN visit, while she was pleasant and lovely, I quickly realized pregnancy is not a very like they're not the center of your pregnancy. I thought my OBGYN was going to be like the end all be all. You're going to tell me what to do, when to do, how to do it, all that. Here, where's the syllabus to this pregnancy? And no,
it wasn't like
it was a rude awakening. It was not that. So I opted for midwives, and I was like, I need somebody who knows about pregnancy beyond just the science of pregnancy. And so that's when I had searched doulas. And so I found an organization here that matched me with 2 doulas. And I picked this organization because they focus particularly on Black women experiences. So I was like, if there's anybody who's going to be conscious about it, it's going to be them. And it was their work with me that I was like, oh my goodness, this was like life changing, and I want to pay it forward. To be honest, I have no desire in ever being in a hospital room watching somebody push. I've never experienced anybody's birth besides my 2 births. My goal of being a doula has always been about empowering people that they feel good about their pregnancy, that they know how to advocate themselves. And it goes back to my point of like, I am not here to do something on behalf of somebody. I'm here to provide guidance and empowerment and encouragement so that they feel good about the thing that they're doing. And so that's why I became a certified doula. I did a 14-month program. I've never had an official client, but I've had a lot of friends that are pregnant or colleagues here. And they're like, hey, I heard that you know a thing or two besides your own. I was like, yes, let's talk about it.
That's awesome.
So I got to lead a grief support group because I had experienced loss, like the loss of my father during my pregnancy. So I got to lead a support group for other women experiences a variety of losses. And so those have been the more fulfilling, rewarding components of that experience.
Wow. That is amazing. I love that, again, it's like going through an experience,
and you don't want somebody else to feel this way, so you want to alleviate it for somebody else.
Yes. That is so cool. In terms of, what drew you to that calling? Like, how does that, how do you find, you just mentioned it, in terms of creating support groups for those who are grieving. So how does that also, I'm sure it connects you to other things at the center too, at La Casa.
Yeah. A part of it has been increasing conversations around reproductive justice in general and recognizing I'm not the expert. So who can we invite to talk about these things? So like our keynote 2 years ago, was the president of Pregnancy Justice, and she's an alum from here. And so how can we just inculcate more of these conversations into the sphere? It's not just about supporting pregnant people, but it's also like supporting families. Something like the baby changing table at the center, or talking about the racist history of medicine and how a lot of these tools were born, or the history of midwives. And so I think it's more in our programming. I have also found that our students are increasingly comfortable in ways that I had not expected, talking with me about their own journeys individually, whether they're scared of something or like, what does this, to the point of like sexually transmitted diseases or infections. And I say, well, that's not my area of expertise, but because I've shown this hat that I've worn, they're comfortable engaging me in these other conversations, even though they know I'm not the expert, but sometimes they just need to they're freaking out and venting. And so holding space for them and like recommending things. And at the end of the day, like, go talk to your provider, but being that first source of support of like, this is okay. This is normal. And we're going to figure this out. So I think it's been more about programming, but I think more significantly in the individual relationships with the folks at the center.
Yeah. And as you were sharing that, it made me think about how, your job is very different because, like we talked about strategic planning and all of these things, but like you said, just being there for a student who's scared and going through whatever they're experiencing and having that comfort.
Yeah.
Because it's such a big deal, right? Like it could be such a scary time and they're not home, they're not with their parents and, having an adult who they trust and can, talk to someone is awesome. So I wonder about, when you think about all the students that pass through La Casa, right? Which I can't even imagine how many
I don't know yet
come through, right?
Yeah.
But what do you hope that they carry with them, after they graduate?
I always hope, regardless if they come through La Casa, that they leave better than they came. And like I used to do a ritual in my office where like I would do some Palo Santo and just an energy check every morning of like, I hope that this can be a barrier where they can leave behind things that are weighing them down and they can leave with things that they needed to feel charged. And that was a very physical, literal, spiritual practice that I had in my office, but I extended that to the rest of the center. But I think it is fundamentally what informs my like vision and approach in all of the work that I do. It is why foundation setting for me is so important and like having good operations, because if that's set, everything else can flourish. And so I think ultimately, I want people to leave better than they came in, whether that's because they learned something more about themselves, because they gained relationships with people, because they learned about their history and their culture and engaged in a way that they hadn't before. Whatever that looks like in application for them may change. But 1 ounce of improvement for me has always been the goal, and 1 ounce of comfort, like being comfortable in the space. I never want anybody to walk in and leave with their shoulders like still high, but being able to breathe a little lighter and move a little lighter throughout the day and be able to see the blessings that we all have in our lives, despite how tough times are.
I love that. It kind of, for my next question, I was like, well, this kind of answers my next question because I was going to ask, in terms of La Casa or even for you as a leader for yourself, what do you see next, for La Casa, or what excites you the most?
I think if I can give a tangible answer, is the fact that we will be celebrating 50 years in the fall of 27.
Nice.
So we have 2 years to get it together and get to that milestone. But it's such an honor to be in a space of 5 decades of existence. And it's all been rooted in student activism, student voices, and community input. Like it's been in partnership historically with New Haven community members, or it's been through alumni engagement. When I came back from my leave, even though there was a lot changing nationally and even within this institution, I had never felt so supported when I came back from my leave, where we had, for the first time in my history here, staff members volunteering to set up centerpieces at our Stoling and Award celebration at the Omni, which is like 500 guests. And something as simple as that. They didn't stay for the event. They didn't ask for free merch. They didn't ask for a table and a free dinner. They came, helped with the centerpieces. They helped us figure out the flow, and they were like, okay, bye. I was like, oh my goodness, like, thank you so much.
Awesome.
So I do hope to continue having amazing campus partnerships and creative programs led by students, but also informed by whatever may be happening on campus and elsewhere. But I am looking forward to that 50th because it's a privilege to be in that position. That's not the case for a lot of other cultural centers, unfortunately. So I'm really excited about that opportunity.
Amazing. All right. My last question. What advice would you, well, 2 things. Actually, it's a 2-part question.
Okay.
Thinking back on your journey, thinking about yourself going through this journey up until now, what would you tell your younger self? What would be the advice you would give your younger self?
Practice makes progress, not perfection. And kind of like lean on that part of when you were talking earlier about how special it is to hold space for a student in distress. I think I'm still shedding this, but there was once upon a time that this was significantly true, where I felt like in order to be some sort of advisor, I had to show up as my most perfect self. Like I had to show up, put all the weight together. And there's a student that I have in mind that I had to talk through a difficult situation, and I did it while I was driving to a work meeting, and it was like a little distance away. So I was like, I don't have time later. Let's just do this now. And I had no agenda, and I'm a big agenda girly, no prep questions beforehand, nothing. It was just like a raw, I had no idea what she wanted to talk about. And I was like, okay, like, but you need help. And so like, I don't think that I can continue to center myself and my own insecurities to be a good advisor or supporter for anybody. I don't have to be the expert in all the rooms about anything that I'm talking about. And so when I think about that and the practice makes progress piece, I think I grew up with an understanding of like perfectionism always being the goal, or now the word being like excellence being thrown around. And I think that carries a lot of weight, but it diminishes the opportunity to be reflective and see how far you've come and like look at all the progress you've made. And improvement is the goal. It's not perfection. And like kind of even with my kiddos now, like my 4-year-old is learning how to write, and she's like upset about what this letter looks like and stuff. And it's like, but look how it looked last week, right? Like we're making progress here. And those are, because that's more realistic and helpful and not tangible, but like manageable, like bite-sized things versus working through this like aspirational, even like for something like weight loss, like you got to lose this many pounds. Like that is so overwhelming. But like, what has your progress been so far? And how do you honor that progress?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great point in terms of, because it can get overwhelming. And sometimes that overwhelming feeling all of a sudden holds you back from like doing whatever you need to do to keep progressing. So like you said, it's, breaking it down into I call it digestible pieces or, chunks that you can, okay, let's just deal with today. Or sometimes just paralysis. The day. Or get through this hour, next hour until the end of the day. And so true. So my second to last question, what advice would you offer someone who's trying to create community wherever they are, whether it's on campus or, their family, neighborhood, or what kind of advice would you offer?
I think it's a twofold. What kind of community do you want? And have that be the driving factor of where you navigate from there. Like, are you seeking intimate relationships? Are you seeking for loud and rambunctious energy? Are you seeking for just academic or intellectual stimulation? But let that be the driving force instead of like squeezing yourself into pre-existing things. Let your why, your goal, your purpose be the rock of your decision making, because that's going to inform who you're going to engage, when you're going to engage. And I think the second piece is to like, you're going to have to be brave. You're going to have to put yourself out there. There's going to have to be some risk taking and being increasingly comfortable with that. It's not something that I would argue that most people are not comfortable with it, and something that they're super looking forward to, but it gets easier with practice. And so continuing to do that vulnerable work of putting yourself out there, because the right magnet is going to attach to you, and you want the right magnet. You don't want the one that's going to fall off because or it's like pushing against and you're trying to make it work. The right one will stick to you if you have your clear goal and you're actually putting yourself out there. Because as nice as it would be for everybody to be like you and I, that we're looking out for the new people, and I don't want anybody to feel this way, you can't rely on that. You can only control yourself. And so having realistic expectations of how you're navigating, and then also expectations of what community looks like for you. Like I have back to those categories. Like I don't rely on all of my friends to fill all of my all of my different buckets. This is my going out girl, and this is the one that I'm going to stay in with, and this is my relationship guru. And that's okay. Having different expectations for different people is okay. Once you put all of the expectations onto either one or everybody to be the same, you're doing yourself and them a dishonor.
That's a great point, and like you said, it's almost like they're taking on different hats for different scenarios, or and it's so true. Like you're setting it up for either failure or not the best situation if you're trying to put it all on that one, Carolina, I thank you so much for joining me today. This was awesome. I always tell everyone who all of my guests that it's like a privilege to me to just get to know you and have you on the podcast, and I hope the listeners take that away too, like just getting to know a different part of you and hearing more about your journey. It reminds us that that leadership isn't just about like what we build. It's about the people we lift up along the way, which you've just exhibited, through all of your, the stories about your journey, which I think is amazing. So just again, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Darice.
Yes.
And I can't wait to be the one to interview you. Check it out. Coming to a microphone near y'all.
I will try at some point.
We're going to put a poll under this one. We're going to put a poll and the people are going to respond.
I'm going to try. I don't know when. I chicken out. I've had a couple times where
I think you need an accountability buddy. And somebody is going to hold space for you because you hold such beautiful space. I will say that your questions are thoughtful and the way you approach this whole process has been magnificent. So thank you for making the space to be like willing to disclose information to you and just being in community with you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. But I don't know if I don't know if I'll switch chairs, but
you can stay in that one. That's fine. We'll keep you comfortable back in your comfort zone.
I know switching to the other side, it will feel so awkward, but man, you locked me in. I don't know. I'll let you know when we will. It seems like it'll have to be a group thing because
absolutely.
So many people have offered to.
We're each going to ask one question.
We'll have to set up like 3 mics, Right. But no, thank you so much, Carolina. It's always a pleasure. I feel so fortunate to be able to work with people like you, as my colleagues, because it's like that's what does make the place special, and that, being able to do what we do to help students, but in the process, it's like we build our relationships and that makes it even more special.
Yeah,
so,
it does.
I appreciate you. And so we'll end on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.